Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at some of the news that will be grabbing our attention during the coming months. It already looks like it's going to be a mega year for biking, but obviously we're still affected by this terrible pandemic. I know it's difficult to stay focused on all the social distancing and mask wearing, especially if you haven't been personally affected by what is an otherwise invisible threat, but that's exactly what you've got to do. Stay safe, because there is, thanks to the new vaccine breakthroughs, light at the end of this very long tunnel. Right, onto the two-wheel news, and I'm going to start with a subject close to my heart, a naked sport bike. I've owned the original version of BMW's S1000R, and now BMW has released the latest version. So much has been updated that BMW is claiming this is effectively a totally new machine, which I suppose it is. The previous model that I owned was a great road sport bike stuffed with useful electronics and a pretty torquey motor. Over the past couple of years though, a lot of competitors have pitched up, bringing with them much more in the way of sportiness, just as much, if not more, electronic trickery and loads more horsepower. I sort of guessed that the updated BMW would not try to compete in the horsepower wars, and like the updated XR would not use the new shift cam technology of the S1000R, but I have to say I'm still disappointed. 165 horsepower is up a little bit on the outgoing model and will still make for a quick bike, but being 15 horsepower down on the Super Duke's Big V Twin and 30 or more shy of the totals from Aprilia and Ducati is, well, it's really annoying when you realise that BMW's own R punts out well over 200 horsepower. Surely 175 or 180 and the use of the shift cam motor wouldn't have been too much to ask? Well, obviously price would have been an issue, but I think most potential customers, especially the ones you're going to lose to the Italians, would say power is more important than price. Okay, grumpy moaning just about over. There's still much to like, including a new lighter frame and an underslung swing arm. The engine, as I've mentioned, does give a bit more power and torque, and it delivers it earlier in the rev range, which in turn means they've been able to lengthen gears 4, 5 and 6 for more relaxed distance work. The glorious TFT screen is borrowed straight from the S1000RR, and there's all the usual electronic riding modes and cornering ABS and all that sort of stuff. There will be an M Sport version too, with a titanium silencer, different wheels and paintwork, and there'll be a selection of other packages which increase the range of electronics and add the now obligatory two-way quickshifter, which actually, thinking about it, should really come as standard on a model like this. The S1000R will undoubtedly be a good bike, but after liking it enough in the past to actually splash some of my own cash on one, I've got to admit this update, it leaves me feeling just a bit cold. Even the looks have taken a bit of a step into blandness, with the new single headlight looking like it could have come off any number of bikes. I know the previous asymmetric design was a bit contentious, but at least it had some character. I have to admit that the next naked sport bike I buy probably won't be from Germany, but it might be from a German-speaking nation. Right, from solid news of definite models, let's delve into the world of hopes and plans and wishful thinking in relation to two famous British brands. Norton has been rescued by Indian company TVS Motor, the third largest manufacturer of scooters in that country. This is good news after the sad demise of Norton earlier this year under the very dodgy stewardship of Stuart Garner. Regular viewers of the bike show will be familiar with the story since we have featured it several times in our news updates. The new owners intend to move the operation to Solihull in the Midlands region of England, where they will start producing the V4 for sale sometime in the latter part of 2021. There's talk of a new Commando model and the possibility, as there needs to be for all brands these days, of an electric model as well. The model most likely, though, to break cover first will be the Scrambler, the Atlas Scrambler, first shown over a year ago by the previous management. Featuring a 650cc parallel twin with a 270-degree firing order and making a claimed, and it has to be said, very impressive 84 horsepower, TVS seems to have decided that it shows enough promise and will go ahead and produce it. If it goes even half as well as it looks, then it could be a fine way to restart the Norton dream. Those customers who've lost investment money or paid deposits for bikes and not got the bikes, or who have got bikes waiting for warranty work, should all get sorted out in the coming year, hopefully. The other British brand revival I've just got time to mention briefly is BSA. If you're much younger than about, 50, I suppose, you can be forgiven for not knowing much about this once major player in the world of biking. In the 1950s and 60s, it was one of the big three brands in the UK, along with Triumph and Norton. And like Royal Enfield and of course Norton itself, its name carries a lot of class and distinction in India and around much of the rest of the world, to be fair. It too has been bought out by an Indian giant in the shape of Mahindra, who it seems are intent on building the bikes once again in the UK. It is reported the new factory in Coventry, which is also, by the way, in the English Midlands, will employ up to 300 people, and the new range will feature one model powered by fuel and one by battery. The factory will have the capacity to produce 10,000 bikes a year, so in the interests of motorcycling as a whole, let's hope that this Mahindra investment really pays off. Moving on to Ducati then, and their mad rush of new models has been continuing since we last told you about the 950 Supersport and the V4 Panigale SP. The next one to arrive was a special edition of the Diavel. Except it's not that special really, and it's a bit of a marketing mashup masquerading as something important, which it is not. Lamborghini has a factory not too far down the road from Ducati's home in Bologna, and it sort of does what Ducati does in the car world. But in fact, a more accurate relationship for Ducati would be Ferrari, where performance is paramount. Lamborghini, on the other hand, is more of a dramatic, flair, statement-making manufacturer of lesser volume cars, a bit like Bimota is in the bike world. But let's not dwell on that, because the more important relationship that exists here between these two concerns is Volkswagen. Why? Well, because it owns Audi, and Audi owns both Lamborghini and Ducati. This Diavel is meant to be a celebration of Lamborghini's hybrid supercar, of which only 63 will be made. There will, on the other hand, be 630 of these Diavels produced, featuring some special paint, a few splashes of carbon fibre, and wheels that sort of bear a passing resemblance to the car's rims. This is a bit of a marketing stretch, I think, and it's more like a prospectus for any investors who might like to take both manufacturers off Audi's hands. Hey, look at us! Imagine how great it would be to own super cool Italian car and bike brands. Anyway, much more interestingly from Ducati though, has been the launch of a totally new monster. Take a good look at it, and I think you'll agree it seems a bit more aggressive, a bit more modern. Look again, and what can't you see? Yes, there's no trellis frame, no lattice work of steel to hold all the bits of the bike together, and since 1993, the Monster's most readily identifiable signature part. If that's too much of an engineering shock for you, don't worry, the 1200 is still available with that latticework frame. For the rest of us, the advantages of the new frame technology will outweigh the negatives. This now has an aluminium front frame similar to that on the V4 Panigale and Multistrada. This, some new cast alley wheels and a new subframe help make the Monster significantly lighter than the 797 and the 821 models that it replaces, just over 18 kilos in the case of the 821. The engine is the same, but with a slightly different tune as the 937cc V-twin found in the Supersport and Hypermotard models, and is good for 111 horsepower in this guise. There's a both ways quick shifter, cornering ABS and traction control, launch and wheelie control, and 3 riding modes. Everything is monitored via the 4.3-inch TFT display. Importantly, it still seems to be a wheelie monster, which is obviously the most important thing. I think to end this news update though, I'll leave you with a teaser that Kawasaki attached to the end of one of its recent marketing videos. It's a bike on a dyno. Have a look. What did you see? What did you hear? What appears to be quiet electric power to begin with, and then petrol power takes over, or does it? Does it work in conjunction with the electric power so both are operating for maximum performance? I hope so. We'll have to keep a close eye for any more sneaky tidbits from the men in green. Enough news. After the break, we revisit a test of one of the most beautiful bikes we rode in 2020. See you in a moment.